So welcome to our session on advocating for me. I really appreciate that you all came and it turned out. I want to start with a couple of disclaimers. Number one, neither Carmen nor I are medical doctors, so this is not medicine by meeting or medicine by internet. This is the experience of two patients that have been at this for a long time, and we're just sharing what we've learned along the way. I also want to thank, we actually have a sponsor for this session. It's Forever Green 24, and so we want to give them a big thank you for sponsoring this and helping to support our conference. So without further ado, because we're running behind, I'm going to just jump right into this. So this presentation is basically a series of suggestions of things that you might do to be a more efficient advocate for yourself in our medical system. And the first thing that we suggest, next slide, is that you should develop a very brief medical history, no more than 2 or 3 pages, that you can keep with you. Keep it on a thumb drive, keep it in your purse, whatever, so that when you go to a new doctor or you end up in the ER, like all the basic big time facts are there. So
medications.
So it should include a brief summary of your parents' medical history. Do they have any chronic illnesses? Are they still living? If they're not living, what did they pass of? Very brief. Doesn't have to be like their whole life story, just a couple of sentences, because just like HPS is genetic, there are a lot of other things that are genetic, and if they're trying to diagnose you, it sometimes is very helpful to know a little bit about your family history. If you have any siblings with chronic illnesses, include that. The date of diagnosis of any chronic medical issues, like for example your HPS, but if you also have anything else like diabetes or whatever it might be, the date of diagnosis of that and how it was diagnosed, the dates of any major hospitalizations, why you were hospitalized, any major surgeries or injuries in your medical history. And we're talking like a line, like date, hospitalization, bowel, whatever. That's it. We're not just short and sweet. If you have any allergies, you should list those. Your list of medications or durable medical supplies, and don't forget to update that at least once a year. Like, if this is a great idea, but it doesn't help you a lot if it's 5 years old and your medication list is out of date. So.
And with HPS, we'd always like to tell people, a lot of people say I'm allergic to NSAIDs or aspirin. We are really not allergic. We can't have them because it make us bleed more, but sometimes there's not a space for it except on allergies. So you gotta kind of tell them it's not really an allergy, but I cannot have them because I have a bleeding dysfunction.
Okay, next slide. The dating game, finding the right doctor. This can be really hard, and it can be time consuming, but it's well worth the effort. So how do you pick your primary care doctor? My doctor now tells the story every time I go to whoever student is there that I interviewed him to be my doctor. I mean, think about it. You wouldn't hire somebody to work on your house without knowing something about who they were and what their skill set was. Why would you hire your doctor by just picking a name off a list? So in the internet age, you can find out a lot about your doctor. A lot of hospitals or medical groups have bios of their doctors. You can look on things like PubMed or Google Scholar and see if they have any publications to their credit, that sort of thing. I narrowed my list down to 3 doctors. Then I made an appointment with each of them, and I asked them questions to find out if they were going to be the right fit for me. You can ask them how will they work with your other specialists inside and outside of their medical system. How will that communication be okay, and are they comfortable with that, and how will that happen? Technically, how will that happen? How do they handle referrals? This often depends on your insurance, but some doctors are very ready
doctors are better at referring than others.
How will you communicate if you have an emergency? So you get this doctor all trained up on HPS, and he's your guy or gal, and then when you really need him, you can't get a hold of him. So you need to know in advance, when I really need you, when I'm kind of to the mat, how am I going to get a hold of you? How am I going to find you? Is he willing to meet with, or she willing to meet with your healthcare proxy and include them in a visit? So Carmen actually is, I have 2 healthcare proxies, my brother and Carmen.
And so I have my husband and Heather.
And I actually conference call into some of her medical appointments so that I know what's going on if she's ever in trouble. I know like the history, especially when she had a bunch of hematology issues a while back and it got complicated. Like I can't know all that the minute she's incapacitated, can't talk for herself. So you need to be include your healthcare proxy people along the way.
And it's good to have two people, because if you have one person that's caring, like my husband will be caring for me or Ryan will be caring for her, they're so immersed in the caring that sometimes they don't hear things, they don't remember things. So it's good to have two people. It's like, hey, remember this, so it's a backup plan.
Ask them how you'll get copies of your medical records or any tests or labs or scans that they do. Because it's really important to gather all these records yourself and not rely on your doctor to keep them for a couple of reasons. When you need to be referred, like to the NIH or to a specialty center somewhere, you're going to need records. And if you have to go around and collect them, it's time consuming, it can cost money. A lot of doctors will tell you, well, we have this great, electronic medical record system online. The thing is, it doesn't always include everything. So you need to know what it does and doesn't include. I never leave an appointment that I don't have a copy of something, even if I have to wait for it, or that I don't have an arrangement of how I'm going to get that. If it's a scan or something they can't give me immediately, then I want to know before I leave, how am I getting a copy of that? So what hospital is your doctor affiliated with, and is it a hospital that you like or is included in your insurance plan? So, in my town, I like to go to the University of Kansas because it's an academic medical center, it's a gigantic hospital. So I want my doctors to have privileges there. Okay, next slide. Preparing for your doctor appointment. So, doctors, they see a lot of patients every day. We're complicated. We got a lot going on in an appointment. So you need to be organized for your doctor's appointments. You need to be forthcoming with what you really need. So, they train medical students and they say that a lot of times there's what they call door knocking complaints. And it's not really the main reason the patient's there. It's the thing they're comfortable talking with about first. And then, the doctor hears like the first 15 seconds of that, then they're on figuring out what to do. And it's, towards the end of the appointment that the patient says as they're leaving, oh, by the way, da-da-da-da-da. Don't do this to your doctors.
Yeah.
Because we don't have time to be shy. It's too important. Get to the point. Always make a list of all your concerns before the appointment and put them in order of importance. So that, the doctor walks in, hello, how are you? You sit down and you pull out your list and you get down to business and go through it. And because you have it written down and the doctor knows you have it written down, you get through each item efficiently. Bring any recent test results or reports from other physicians from other locations. So especially when I was in the drug trial at NIH, they were constantly doing tests there. There's no need to repeat those tests at home, but my doctor needs to have copies of that. So just like you're getting copies of everything from your doctor, get copies of everything everywhere else you go, and bring it so everybody that's working with you has copies of everything.
This is very important. Bring a notebook. Yes. Bring a notebook to your appointment. Because you know what happened? You hear one word and you get stuck on that word, and then you forget. You forget the rest that they're saying. So if you make notes, instead of forgetting, you go back and say, okay, wait, we talk about this. And if you have doubts of what the appointment was, you'll have your notes.
And sometimes the doctor's making several points to you, and you might have a question that you need to come back to, but you don't want to interrupt him because he's in a flow, So it gives you a place to write that down so you don't leave the office and be like, oh man, I should have asked him, whatever. When you're going to your doctor's office, it's always nice to review if you've signed all the releases for anybody else on your team that needs to be able to communicate with your doctor, such as other doctors, other families. With HIPAA, you need to make sure everybody's got permission to talk to everybody else. Don't leave any original copies of records because it's like the black void and you will never get them back. So either bring photocopies with you or ask them to make photocopies and keep all your originals. Okay, next slide. So don't go it alone, and don't be shy about asking people to go to appointments with you or about updating and talking with your family members about what's going on with your appointments. Everybody needs a second set of eyes and ears to help them navigate this, especially as you get older and your health situation gets more complicated. Okay, so Carmen, do you want to talk about this next one? I'm losing my voice.
Sometimes it can be hard to process medical information. Most patients find it hard to mentally process medical information from their doctors and others, even though it's about their own health, because they're in pain, they're loopy from meds, or stressed, in denial or compromised by illness or by other ways. So always, that's why it's important that you have somebody with you. You're not going to remember. If they're dealing with you in an emergency, you're not going to remember what they did. You're not going to know. Or even if you go and you're in pain, the last thing you want to know is figure out things. So that's why you should always have somebody. Your healthcare proxy. Pick a proxy wisely. You have to have somebody that knows your medical history, that if it's willing to have a conversation with your doctor. The other important thing is talk to them about what you want to do. Share with family and your proxy what your wishes are. And do it when you're healthy. If you say, like I have a conversation with my family saying, I want my lungs to go to NIH. And that's my gift to the HPS community. And that's my wish. And if I wait until I'm sick or I'm compromised or they're not going to listen. They're going to have too many things. It's a lot. That's a hard conversation to have. So do it when you're healthy and make sure that you make your wishes. And people's like, oh, that's so crappy. I don't want to talk about that. No, it's your wishes. And
it's just taking care of business. And just tell people that, like, I'm not worried I'm going anywhere tomorrow. I'm just taking care of business.
I just want to take care of this. And the other important thing is each state has their own rules and regulations for proxy. So please make sure that you check with your state and know which ones those are.
This slide's kind of a repeat from the one. Just in case you missed it, make copies of everything.
Yeah, that's about it. It's like, make sure you have that. We cannot emphasize that enough. You know, we see patients that are going to be looked at a transplant center, and it takes them months to get their information. There's no need. You need to have that at home.
If you have it all in your file, you can take it all with you, and then you don't have this run around when your time is really of the essence.
We also want to make sure that people realize that medication, that you have to be aware of your medications. You need to know what your medications are. The same way you know your history, you need to know your medications. People who go through lung transplants, they cannot leave the hospital until they know their medicines. Backward and forward, they need to know. And so do we. We need to know what we have. Medication errors are some of the most common adverse events that occur in hospitals. If you don't know what you're taking and your nurse comes and gives you something, always ask. Don't be shy.
Yeah.
Ask.
Check. Make sure that they know what they're giving you. And you know, I mean, sometimes the pill will look different because they use a different brand or something. But always check.
And not all these errors are fatal, but they can cause injury. So we don't need that. We have enough.
Got enough problems. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hospital stays.
Clean everything. Don't touch anything.
Nothing. Don't touch nothing.
When I go to NIH, even, I don't trust, I mean, I'm sure the housekeepers are great housekeepers. Mm-hmm. It's just easy to miss stuff. So I take, disinfectant wipes and stuff, and I clean the bed rails and the TV and the TV remote and the phone and where you talk on the phone and the handles to the side, bedside thing. People forget about that stuff.
You're gonna, we have a trip to New York after conference, and you probably would think, if you see us, you think like we're the kindergarten club. Because we go like, okay, let's go on a line, and everybody like this. No one touch the train rails. And we hold to each other, and no one touch crap. Yeah. Keep a notebook with, this is kind of a repeated, keep a notebook of everything in your bedside, so you can take notes and know your medicines. Because sometimes, doctors come whenever they
Whenever they're rounding,
rounds.
whenever that is.
So sometimes there's no family with you. So it's better that you sit down. When they come, you have a place to write down what did you talk about, if they found anything new, if they're going to change medication. So when the family member or the caregiver comes, you can have specifics. And if they have questions, they have notes that they can go by.
And there's a place to write your questions down. If you're sitting there thinking about it and you think, I wonder, you know, it's so easy to forget, especially when you're on a lot of meds. It's easy to forget stuff.
So, is that?
Next slide. Next slide. Oh,
There you go.
in case you missed it,
Wash
don't
your-
touch stuff and wash your hands.
We
Wash your
cannot
hands
say it enough. Wash
and
your
wash
hands.
your hands.
And in doubt, wash your hands.
So there are a lot of superbugs going around hospitals these days, and we're going to mention a couple of these. It's really important for us because if you get one of these superbugs and you need a lung transplant down the line, it can really complicate that process if you have a history of MRSA, for example. So you need to really be diligent about this to avoid getting this. And you need to say, like when they're admitting you, if they think you're a germaphobe, say, you know, I have a disease where I may need a transplant someday, and MRSA could keep me from getting that transplant. I need to not get this here. So this source here, Project Zero, is an awesome website. They have all these checklists for MRSA and C. diff and everything. I was trying to make handouts and my printer died right as I was leaving. So we'll put on the website links to all those things later.
They have tips like be careful with germs. Don't, that doesn't just apply to hospital settings. Anywhere you go, that there's a lot of people, there are going to be germs. Open doors with possible with your sleeve. Push elevator buttons with your elbow. Look for germs on phones, places, for germ-prone places like shopping carts, the handles. Always wipe down the handles. I love my supermarket. Now they have Clorox wipes in the entrance, so you come in and you just wipe down the cart before you use it. And people is like, oh, why did dirt? I'm like, yes. I think I'm the only client that's like only customer that is so excited about it. And that's this is a video that we were trying to put in, but it doesn't have any audio. So, but you guys, when it goes in the internet, if you click on it, you'll get to the link.
It's a cute video about how to wash your hands properly. It's not sticking your hands into the water and you're done. Like there's a whole process to be sure that you get it done right. And it's a funny video about how to do that.
I doubt, this is what I was doing a grant at a preschool once, and what they do is they sing the ABC song. There you go.
Yeah.
And that.
Another one's Happy Birthday, to sing that sort of twice. Yeah.
So and that will give you enough time to wash properly.
Okay, next slide. So would you like to donate tissue to help with future HPS research? We kind of threw this in because there's not a really good place to bring this up, but since it's part of your healthcare proxy, etc., if you should so desire, it's incredibly helpful for HPS research to donate tissue. Whether you're getting a transplant, you donate your old lungs, you're not going to use them anymore, or whether you pass, or whether you're having a procedure done and they're going to be biopsying something, there might be a little extra tissue left. Even if you're having something medically done that doesn't appear like it would be related to HPS, like,
Right.
Hey,
NIH has my ovaries.
That's what I was trying to get you to say.
Yeah. They have everything.
You wouldn't think
Anything
that they'd want
I
them,
take out,
but they might want them.
By the end they're done, I'm going to be hollow.
By pieces.
There's nothing left. They all have it there.
So if you're having something done, call the network, let us know so we can find out if the researchers have any interest in that tissue.
Oh, did we pass it? Oh, no, there it is. There's two places that we do this with. We do it directly with the NIH. They sometimes have contacts in the hospitals, like my hospital is Brigham's in Boston, and they connected with Dr. Meredith, and they got those tissues. And when that's not possible, the network contracts NDRI, and that's an organ
procurement.
There we go.
Yeah.
And they
or tissue procurement.
Tissue procurement,
yeah.
and they actually go to the hospital and collect the tissue.
So the thing that's tricky about this is which one is the best option? depends on the situation. So it's very helpful. This is why you got to have this conversation with your family and stuff way ahead of time, because
And call the network.
you need to call the network, and we need to find out, talk to NIH, and figure out A, do they want the tissue, and B, which of these routes is going to be the most effective way to get it. And we have to make sure that you have consents signed in both places.
Yeah, but talk to
So-
them, because sometimes you just sign the papers and the family forgets. And then things happen, and then it's like, oh, they get their organ? No.
So that's what we have. Tell your family you want to do this. And then tell your family you want to do this.
Yeah.
Tell the HPS network. Tell the NIH.
Tell your proxy.
Tell your proxy. And even if you've signed the paperwork, you still need to tell everyone. So as an example, years ago, one of my very good HPS friends, Elsie, was going for a lung transplant, and sadly she didn't get her lung. But she was so adamant that this was the lasting gift, if she didn't make it, that she could give the HPS community, that she wanted her lungs to go to the NIH. And that was unbelievably hard to get done. Sometimes, depending on the situation, like we might have to call like the head of pathology at that department and get them to understand this can't sit around for a week before you get to it. It needs to, be done now, and the slide needs to be prepared this way. And sometimes it's a big request. So please, if you're adamant about it, Elsie made it so much easy for me to call her and talk with her about what we needed to do to get this done, because it ended up being hard. I didn't feel like the organ vulture, you know what I mean? It's because I knew that it was her wish. I was helping her fulfill her wish. So if that's what you want, please communicate it.
This is very important. We call it doctor etiquette. In other words, do not piss off your doctor. You need them. Make sure that you're nice to your doctors. And even if they're wrong, find a nice way to tell them. Because, we know when you have a rare disorder, not all doctors know about us. We go to the place and you tell them what you have.
want to know about you, but don't ever talk about it. The medical community is a small world. You don't want to get a reputation, whether or not people are supposed to talk about stuff happens. And you don't want to have the reputation of being a pain in the butt patient, So if you don't like your doctor, you don't have to be in love, but always be professional.
Be professional. I went to my pulmonologist and I told him I need to see a GI doctor, and they told me I need to see this doctor. And he's like, well, he looked at me and was like, really? I said, yeah, this is the doctor that everybody's telling me about. I need to see her. And he's like, oh, but she's not good with this. I'm like, no. And she said, I heard she's the best. And she's like, yeah, she's my wife. I'm like, oh, okay.
But she said she was the best, right?
Thank God I was saying she was good. So, you never know.
Yeah.
And he was tickled pink that he's like, I can ask her, but the best doctor for Crohn's is Dr. Chen, not her. I'm like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I know. She sends the Crohn's patient to him. I'm like, okay. I was like, you feel more comfortable, I can have her, but I'm like, okay, no, I'll trust you, I guess. So yeah, it's
the other thing is, if you and your doctor are having a disagreement about something, we work so hard to ingrain all this HPS information into us about the bleeding and how to do this, but we're all medically complicated, and other things could be wrong with you besides HPS.
Right.
And we may know a lot about HPS, but we're not doctors, and we don't know a lot about all the other stuff. So if you feel uneasy with something, the first place to start is to ask your doctor to explain it, because that way you both know what the thought process is behind it. And then you can evaluate what you want to do, but they may have a good reason because of something unique about you.
And I get a question asked all the time, like, where can I move that I find an expert on HPS? And my answer is moon. Because really, we are one of 7,000 rare diseases. So the chances of finding an expert on HPS, we're lucky we have the NIH, but the NIH is research, they don't treat.
Yeah,
so for regular doctors, chances are you're going to know about HPS more than they do. So it's our reality. So one of the first things we got to do is kind of accept that, because we're not going to find an expert. We'll find somebody that's seen 3 or 4, and that we're lucky. Otherwise, we have to know that we are going to be the ones that are going to be having that responsibility of kind of...
It's sad because it's not a responsibility that we all want to have, but it's just kind of the way it is. So always, if your doctor says something that you know is wrong about HPS, you do need to correct it. but be polite and gentle in how you do
Right.
it. Don't be like, "Yeah, you dummy," like
Right.
you need to be really gentle and polite about it.
And
that you
like
maintain that good
I'm very matter of
relationship.
fact. Like they're like, oh yeah, you have a bleeding disorder, you have a low count. It's like, no, I have bleeding dysfunction. Like I'm was like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm bleeding dysfunction. Oh yeah, bleeding dysfunction. So, so as the other fact is that when you're just because a hospital has patients with HPS, don't assume that they're gonna know. Don't because each shift, you're in a major hospital. Each shift has hundreds of people, like in the ER. Right. So change of shifts means change of information. So we have to go over the information again. And again, that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah, don't be annoyed if they come back and they're asking you the same stuff that you just answered 8 hours ago, because it's probably the new shift and they really need to know.
Let's see.
Okay, remember that we are all different, that there are exceptions to all the HPS rules. For example, there may be cases where you need a medication that can affect your clotting because whatever else is going on with you is that much of a big deal. So just make sure that everybody on the team understands HPS and ask them to explain why they want to take that particular course of action. Because there have been some cases where HPSers have needed, drugs that actually make them bleed more because of something else that was going on. And if you need to discuss, why that decision's being made and what precautions you're going to take in that circumstance. And lastly, we hear this a lot.
I'm not a bleeder. You have no nice bodies. Guess what? You are a bleeder.
Yeah. So everyone with HPS does have a bleeding disorder, and yes, it's true, it's a bell curve, and some of us bleed worse than others. But a lot of times, the people that say, I'm not a bleeder, it may be just because they haven't met the right trauma yet. So
yeah, I love my little thing. Please look at it. It's so cute. That made my day.
So it could be that you've just been lucky. So don't be lackadaisical about the bleeding stuff just because you've never had a bad bleed.
And that's this thing. It's like my hematologist said, the person with HPS that hasn't bled is because they haven't had the right trauma. And it's true. You haven't had enough trauma to make you bleed. But you are, you might be, like I said, a bell curve. And I think that we have also times where we notice bruising more than others.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things can affect your platelet function, like, stuff that you eat that are, you may take in a medication that you didn't even realize had aspirin in it, or things, things in your environment can affect things too. So
I had a time that I was eating gum, like, I don't know, because wintergreen gum, and I was bruising everywhere until I went to the NIH, was like, we can figure this out, and I got a gum from my purse, and my Dr. Markello is like, what is that? Gum. What is it? Wintergreen? There you go.
That's what they make aspirin out of, wintergreen.
So little things like that can affect your bleeding. Fish.
Fish, yeah. I was traveling in China, and the part of China I was in was by the ocean, so we had fish like 3 meals a day. I love fish, and I can eat fish. It's not that I can't eat fish, but omega-3 does affect clotting function, and when I had fish 3 times a day for a week, by the time I went home, I was like one walking bruise. It was a mess.
So with that, we always say, be aware of natural products, because they're natural. That doesn't mean they're good for us. Sometimes natural products can affect your bleeding, and you don't, they're good if you don't bleed.
And sometimes they're good in moderation. You just have to be aware.
You just need to be aware of it.
Yeah.
So you guys have any questions?
Yeah.
And is there, like you said, there's different foods, or like, is there a certain place where you can go to maybe find out that info, which maybe you should try to?
Well, if you go to hpsnetwork.org, there's a list, and it's not a complete list, as of
it's
medications.
What we're continually working on.
It's medications, and at the end, if I'm not mistaken, there's some of the natural products.
Yeah,
it's hard because some of these natural products are not really regulated by the FDA, so you don't really know what's in them.
Or how they affect, like there haven't been studies done, so it's kind of...
So it's kind of,
It's a work in progress. There is a branch of the NIH that is actually working on that and issuing publications, if you have this kind of disease, be aware of this natural product. But they're always kind of hedging their bets a little bit, like they never come out and say, no, don't do this, or yes, it's kind of like this may or may not be a problem, you know. But it's a work in progress.
Is the diagnostic code, is that up on the website for the network?
Not yet, but
Not
we can
yet.
put it up there.
Can you rattle it off? Do you know it?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, we're gonna play it on the lotto, but we haven't memorized it yet.
Well, I had an experience with Nisha where I couldn't get them to okay doing some dental procedures in an outpatient as opposed to in the dentist office.
Right.
And I wanted to do outpatient because of, you know, the concerns. And when I tried to get down to the bottom of it, they had some crazy diagnostic code that didn't have anything
Right.
to do with
Yeah.
the issues. And so no wonder they wouldn't okay it. So
Right.
anyway,
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's been the problem for years. So that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons we're glad to have a diagnostic code. That, and now there's statisticians. If we start having people that are coded correctly in their medical records, there are statisticians that can go in. You know, it's all blinded, and they can do
They can
reports.
fix,
And,
yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In having kind of all the paperwork in line and everything, if it ever came down to needing a platelet transfusion, because I don't know anything about that, do you have to know like what your blood type is, or knowing the certain type of platelet to get, or is
What-
it just a platelet
What
that
we,
anybody gets?
well, what we, they
they'll
have to
always
match.
type and cross before
Yeah,
they.
they'll have to match the blood.
Yeah.
What we tell people that are having platelet transfusion is that they have to have single donor platelets,
Okay.
so they come from the same person. I think now when Boston Children's, what they do with the kids that have HPS is they assign a donor. So anytime the kid has a procedure, in an emergency it's hard, but if when possible, the same person donates, because that decreases the chances of developing antibodies. So
So this antibody issue is a very new issue for us, so there aren't really clear guidelines that have been issued yet. It's kind of in debate with our scientific review board. But yeah, but we're trying
working
to
on it.
trying to make people more aware.
We
'Cause
need
it
them.
used
You know,
to
if he
be-
needs them, he needs them.
Yeah.
If they're needed, they're needed. There's no question, you know.
But the old wisdom was give platelets because they aren't going to hurt you and be safe than sorry. But now we're finding there is this issue with the lung transplantation. And it's also an issue if you happen to be a bad bleeder, because the more
The more
platelet
you get,
transfusions you get,
the
they
least
work.
they work.
They work shorter amounts of time. So platelets will work really quick. So a lot of times you go through the process, you just have them on standby. I had a test recently, and it wasn't a test that was going to make me bleed, but because it was internal, I'm like, you know, you slip, you nick something, suddenly we're in trouble. So we went through this whole process, and we just had them on standby, and I didn't need them, and they just put them back in the fridge, no big deal. So.
So would you, if you're doing a single donor, would you want to make sure that it was like you were visiting that same hospital every time?
Well, if it's planned procedure, yeah. You know, if it's a planned procedure, you hope that you'd have all your place in the same place.
Yeah.
But I think that your best. I think are we gonna have? We don't have a hematologist this year, right?
No.
On Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, last year we had a transfusion expert, but
Yeah.
since we did that last year, we didn't do it this year.
Yeah, but we're trying to work on our website this summer, so I think that's probably
Some of
something
the
that
things
will
will be
be
updated.
in there. Yeah.
So when we update our website, everything has to be medically reviewed, so it's kind of a
Yeah, we just don't
timely
put it
process.
there because
And we don't just slap it up there because it's our opinion. So we,
we don't get it from Wikipedia.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyone else? Don't raise your hands because we can't see you.
Yep.
Say me.
Shout out. So after this we're going to archive this if it all recorded okay and everything, and then we'll put the link to the video on the hand washing, and I'll put some of the links to the really cool checklist on Campaign Zero's website, so you can print them out and take them with you if you're in the hospital. And
Oh, we have some. Hold on.
we also you know what
We do have some, but not all.
the
forgot.
other thing is to be sure about I know Kevin mentioned
That's-
this,
this is
but
for you.
also
Can
be
you
aware
have
that
one?
your medical alert.
Okay.
Keep that updated.
And look at that, they're large print.
Okay, so this is a general checklist about preventing infections. So
I think that's the only one we have. But,
Yeah.
but we'll put
Before
the
the printer
links
died, so.
for Program Zero, and you guys will be able
There
to
you go.
access it from the link. What I tell parents is put the HPS network in your favorites. So if you have a question, you can just click and get information. We also have
You want-
when I do a public service announcement, we have a parent support group on the second
Teacher,
Tuesday
you
of the
want
month in English and every Wednesday in Spanish. And parents call from all over the place and they ask questions. And if I don't know the answer, we'll go back to the office and ask Donna and get the answers for you. So that's another way to get information.
Does the network still have like a little provider folder? Can I like last year?
Yes.
I got those.
I think you gotta call the office and request them. They're like folders with information for when you go see your doctor. Like what we say is like we usually send one and ask you to make copies. So when you see your doctor, you go in with your little pamphlet and say, here, has some information about HPS and where you can learn about it.
These are all sticking together.
Are they all the same? Yeah. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Can you pass this one back behind you?